all join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. So good evening, everybody. Thanks for being here. Nice to see you all. A lot of brave people coming out in the rain. And so it was 2005, and the Cubs were in the playoffs, which, if you're a baseball fan and know anything about that, that never happens. These are the Chicago Cubs. And I was at my parents' house, and playoffs were on. Started getting ready, putting my shoes on, and my mom said, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to temple," which was odd, by the way, because I grew up Jewish, and so when you hear temple, you immediately assume I'm going to Jewish temple. So that took her a little while to get used to. But I said, "I'm going to temple." And she said, "But the game's on." I said, "I know, but that's where I want to be right now." There was a, service starting that morning, or that afternoon, so I was going. And I got up, and she kind of looked at me and said, "Oh, we've lost him for good." Right? And it's, I bring that up because, are there any baseball fans in the room? So some of you know what's going on right now. The rest of you who are normally here are at home watching it right now. But it's the 7th inning of the World Baseball Classic, USA, Japan in the finals. And the fact that I'm sitting here in itself and not watching that game is an absolute miracle. So I want you all to understand that anything is possible in this world. You can accomplish anything, you can change anything, you can do anything. You cannot attach, and I don't mean not love, you cannot attach to anything. And you can slowly begin to figure out in your lives what's most important. What makes the biggest difference for you in your life? What are you passionate about? What moves you? What changes you? What gives you meaning? What gives you fulfillment? What gives you direction? And these are things that are really important to ponder on any spiritual journey that you're on. Now at that time, it was just, I was, 2 years into my Buddhist study and journey. So I was showing up because that was what I needed to do to keep myself from doing a bunch of other stupid stuff. But reflecting back on it and beginning to recognize at that time, and again, this was 18 years ago, that was for me the moment I was starting to recognize that life was different now. And I wasn't going to keep doing the things I had been doing the majority of my life. And I wasn't going to keep going to the places I was going to the majority of my life. And this isn't in any way meaning that there's anything wrong with baseball or that we shouldn't have hobbies or things that we enjoy, right? That's absolutely, keep all of those. There are chairs scattered around if you want to come on and sit somewhere. Don't be shy. There's 3 or 4 up front. I know you're all going to pile into the back, but and so it's really important to understand what is it that makes a difference in your life. And for me, at that time, baseball was just one of many things that was a healthy outlet. It was a healthy escape. It was something to turn to that allowed my mind to settle and be calm. But it was also in the same category of a bunch of other things that I would turn to help me feel settled and calm that were not so healthy. And so it became, again, for me, the starting moment of recognizing what's important in your life. And then understanding where can you actually make a difference, not just in your life, but in the lives of those around you. And in Buddhism, we call this the Bodhisattva path. That it's understanding that everything you think, everything you say, and everything you do in your life has an impact on the people around you. And so baseball for me, while I still love it, and here it is 20-something years later, and it was really hard for me to walk away. If I ignored you kind of when you came in, it's because I was listening to the game, nothing personal, right? And oh, by the way, I am the one who left my own bar mitzvah early when I was 13 to go play in a baseball game. Because I told my parents when I was 13 that if they wanted me to go to the bar mitzvah, they had to let me play in my game also. And they tried to pull the Sandy Koufax and, Yom Kippur, he didn't play. But that wasn't working on a 13-year-old kid. So, and that's an interesting thing to me also, is that interest, that desire, that craving to just want to watch and know what's going on is still there. But what's more important is the fact that there's a whole bunch of people sitting here. And that's where my attention needs to be. And as we start meditation here in a few moments and my mind wanders to the game, which it will, I'll come back to this. And then 2 seconds later, my mind will wander again, and I'll come back to this. Because that's a game. This is life. And life can be incredibly difficult and painful very often. So it's important to understand what moves you and what really makes a difference in your life and to follow that. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and we'll start a meditation practice. For those of you who are joining virtually, glad you're here. Thanks for joining us. There's a chat box you'll see somewhere on your screen, so feel free to type in your name or thoughts or comments and say hello. So meditation practice, a couple things I'll tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. You don't ask yourself, is it working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside the room, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all the chaos. Posture, you want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion, it does often help slide to the front third, pushing the stomach forward. If you're on a chair, bench, however you're seated, just trying to sit up straight, relaxing the shoulders. Hands can be on the knees or on the lap. If you need to move during meditation, please move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator. It just means your leg hurts, you have an itch. So simply move your leg or scratch your itch and return to stillness. Okay? Your mind will continue to wander. It will continue to race. You're not trying to stop your thoughts. You're not trying to empty your mind. You're not trying to think nothing. You would end up sitting there telling yourself, think nothing, think nothing, think nothing, and you might as well get up and go do something. So I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention and focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments of the practice, just sitting, breathing. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound. each thought, each physical sensation. Yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sound, and the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, Taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. The most important with the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind. Whatever you're sitting with at this moment has nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how you sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's nothing to do with the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awaken. He was a human being, no different than any one of us in this room, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us in this room, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. That's what we get. The practice of meditation is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, and disturbed by no one. This is not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. Meditation is not an escape, as often people think it might be. It is direct perception into the present moment. If your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess, meditation doesn't fix that. It helps you become aware of why your life is a crazy, hectic, stressed out mess so you can then make changes in your life. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. And learning to be kind to every single person you meet, every moment of your entire life. That's why it's so simple. You just have to roam around and be nice to people all day. You can all do that, right? It's not that difficult. I saw 1.5 thumbs up. Thank you very much. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, which is where we spend so much of our time, hoping they do this, hoping they do that, wishing they would do this, wishing they would do that, complaining about this, complaining about that. We spend so much time and energy wasted on the thoughts and actions of others, and very little time focused on our thoughts, our words, our actions. That's the practice. It doesn't mean, for those who are new to Buddhist practice, that you ignore what's going on around you. It doesn't mean that there aren't terrible, horrific, tragic, disgusting things happening in this world that we should be aware of and do our best to have a positive impact on. But what it means is you're viewing these things with the mind of kindness, a heart with compassion, and doing your best to take care of yourself. So when you go into the world, you treat it a little kinder and a little gentler than you normally do. That's the practice. It's waking up to each moment as it is and being grateful. You know, and as we were sitting here in the meditation and all the rain was coming down pretty hard, which is great because it just helped keep you all awake. So that's really nice. But all I kept going to was gratitude. I really thought I would sit here and just ponder the baseball game the whole time. And I just kept going to gratitude. Because look how fortunate every single one of us is right now. We're sitting here completely covered, completely sheltered, completely dry. And our nice warm clothes, our nice warm socks, our nice warm blankets, gloves if you've been coming here a while and you're smart, right? We're prepared. You got some, I know, there you go. And yet, we will still find things to complain about and not be grateful for. About 2 miles from here, there's about 10,000 people sleeping on the streets that don't have the shelter we're sitting under right now. And yet, how often do we think about that? How much of our lives is focused on making sure we have what we need? And then when we're done with what we need, then we make time for other people. This practice is about understanding that we are no more or less important than anybody else. But there's an equal level of importance for everybody. And even if we're not there yet, can we at least settle into a place of gratitude each day? To feel incredibly fortunate to have. If you're here on a Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, then you have a lot of good things going in your life, no matter how difficult it might be. There's a lot to be grateful for. And can we spend our days in that place? Because we all know what it's like to actually feel and live with a sense of gratitude and appreciation for people and places and things. And that feels really good. We've all been there. But for some reason, we don't spend much time there. We're so quick to jump to the frustration and the anger and the disappointments and the sadness and the pointing fingers that it's everybody else's fault. Yeah, other people have a huge impact on our lives. Absolutely. But you know how hard it is to change your own thoughts and your own words and your own actions? And yet somehow we think we can change other people. We have a hard enough time giving up our unhealthy habits, but we're so quick to judge everybody else's for theirs. So for me, Buddhist practice has, from day one, just been nothing but a mirror. Reflecting back on what are my thoughts, what are my words, what are my actions, and how does that impact my life and the life of those around me. Those I know and love, those I dislike, those that are kind and compassionate to me, those that challenge me and dislike me. There's a lot of those people. How do we bring ourselves into the world each day? That's what this practice is about. How do we show up for our friends and family and strangers and communities? So with that, I'll pause. For me, I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind. And we'll use the rest of our brief time this evening for questions. And again, for those joining virtually, welcome, glad you're here. As you are, you'll see there's a chat box somewhere on your screen, so feel free to say hello, or if you have any thoughts or questions, to put them there, and I'll do my best to respond. So we'll open up to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with at this moment. Yes.
I was wondering, what if I went to a different Buddhist temple, what would it be? What are some of the differences I would find in some of the different Buddhist temples?
Well, you probably would, if so, I typically repeat things for those joining virtually. The question was, what are some of the different things you might find if you went to other Buddhist temples? The one unique thing here that you probably won't find there is a Jewish kid in a 95-year-old Christian church with a cross on top leading a Buddhist discussion. You could probably cross that one off your list. Other than that, what you're going to find is a whole range of things, right? Within 5-10 miles of here, radius, and I'm not exaggerating, there's probably 30 to 40 Buddhist temples, all from different cultures, from a Thailand culture, Lao, Cambodian, Taiwanese, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Tibetan, Sri Lankan, you name it. San Diego has, if you expand that, there's probably 100 Buddhist temples you could drive to within an hour. And what you're going to find at all of them is something completely different. But I always encourage people to go. Most of those places that I reference are really set up to kind of be a temple, a community, a space for people from that specific culture. And they love to see people from other cultures show up there. They don't always know what to do with you. And more likely, you'll probably feel uncomfortable and not sure what to wear. Should I bow? Where do my shoes go? Am I doing something wrong? Just show up. With all of your mess and all the things that you think you're going to do wrong, just show up. And they'll be glad you're there. And experience it. Every Buddhist temple, for the last, 17 years, I've been telling people, explore culture, what I refer to as cultural Buddhism. Because there's a 2,500-year history of that. And I think it's really beautiful and really important to understand that to most Western people, we show up and we explore meditation and Buddhism as a philosophy and a way of life, and a meditation, and kindness and compassion, and these kind of key buzzwords that you hear from Dalai Lamas and Thich Nhat Hanh before he passed and still today, and Pema Chodron, and all these wonderful, very Western-minded teachers sharing Buddhism and meditation. But to not discount the fact that Buddhism is a 2,500-year-old, one of the world's largest and oldest religious practices. And when you go to cultural temples, you're going to see that, right? And experience it. The bowing, the chanting, the robes, all that kind of stuff. It's beautiful. Now, it freaks a lot of people out. They might not go back. But, show up. We started this space to kind of pull a lot of that out, to make it more friendly to kind of local Western folks that did not want to bow and chant and wear robes every day and do things in other languages. But you'll see beautiful practices going on with people that are happy to see you, even if they don't know what to do with it. Does that help answer your question?
Very much, thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Other thoughts, questions? Yes, sir.
So how much time in the day you spend meditating? Is it different days? You know what's going on in your life? What's your kind of?
Yeah, it varies from day to day, but I always encourage people to sit 5 minutes every day. And what that means is I have in my own personal life vowed to make sure I sit at least 5 minutes every day. I got a lot of stuff to do. I don't have an hour or 2 or 3 to sit in meditation and breathe. I got a lot to do, right? And if I said to you or anyone who was newer to meditation, do this 20, 40 minutes every day, twice a day, what do you think people are going to tell me? I'm crazy, yes. I hear that all the time, or what else? Too busy. I don't have time. Now, if I show up and say, do this 5 minutes every single day, the likelihood goes up to like 1%. You know, I like those odds. Okay, I think of meditation as brushing our teeth, combing our hair. Some of us don't have to worry about that anymore. But these are things that we do every single day. When we brush your teeth or comb our hair, you probably don't have a timer. You're probably not doing it differently every day. You have a routine, you have a habit. You have habitual patterns of behaviors that you've been doing for a long time. Would you ever go 6 months without brushing your teeth? It'd be pretty gross. How long have we all gone without taking care of our minds? Right? I can't speak for any of you here, but I know how long I went without taking care of it, and it was disgusting. It was a mess, filled with anger and greed and hatred and ignorance. So you begin to clear the mind of all those typical ways of being. And if you tell somebody do this 20, 40 minutes a day, they're just going to give up and not do it. But 5 minutes is what I encourage people to do. Wake up first thing, brush your teeth, comb your hair, splash water in your face, drink your coffee, whatever you got to do, and then take 5 minutes and just sit. For those of you who do sit longer or want to sit longer, I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong with sitting longer. But if you're newer to the practice, keep it realistic. You don't need incense, you don't need candles, you don't need to go to a place, you don't need a class, you don't need to spend $20, you don't need a 6-week course. You just need 5 minutes of your own crazy mind and sit with that. Because whose mind causes all the pain and suffering in your life? Your own. And what are we often trying to run away from? Our own mind. So learn to sit with it. Yeah. But if I ever get to the point where I have 6 hours to sit around all day and do nothing but meditate, I will call you. But I don't anticipate that happening anytime soon. Yeah. But since I kind of preach, for lack of better words, do 5 minutes every day, I make sure I get that in. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I noticed in the beginning you talked about dependent origination.
Yeah.
That's the basis of his awakening, causal relationship. Can you expand a little bit upon that in your understanding?
Sure. So the question was, at the beginning or after meditation, I talked about dependent origination, pratitya samutpata, as the basis of the Buddha's awakening. Can I expand on that? That's what you're asking. So what this is really addressing is the causal relationship of all phenomena, in brief. And what that means is karma. Karma is often, especially in Western culture, and I'll come back to that, but let me explain this first because I'm going to talk about karma. Or, let me talk about karma first. Karma is often seen as what goes around comes around. That's a really selfish way to see karma. That makes it seem like it's all about you. And we think, well, if we do good, then we get good. If we do bad, we get bad. We know that's not true. You ever done a lot of bad stuff and had something really good happen? You ever done a lot of good stuff and had something really bad happen? So we can throw that out the window. Our Western view of karma is what do I get? Well, they did terrible things. Their karma's coming to them. Karma literally means action. And the Buddha taught we generate karma, action, 3 ways: body, speech, mind. Karma is not what we get, karma is what we give. It's what we bring into the world. So the metaphor I always use is if you're playing pool and the cue ball hits the rack, every time that cue ball hits the rack, every ball goes into a different direction. So our entire life, we are that cue ball. And every person, place, and thing that we encounter, we leave an imprint on. And so Buddhist practice is to be very mindful. That's where the kind of the buzzword of mindfulness comes from. To be mindful of your karma, mindful of your thoughts, words, and actions. Because that creates your reality and the life for those around you. So what dependent origination, pratitya samuppada, is really getting at, again, keep in mind, this is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. I'm just some unenlightened, ignorant dude. So I'm going to give you, obviously, as the way you phrased it, of course, too, understanding that this is just my own interpretation of it. Understanding that every single thing I do is really critical to watch it. Because our words are very powerful. Our thoughts are very powerful. And our actions are very powerful. The Buddha praised Subhuti, one of his great disciples. He asked him to give a discourse on wisdom. And you know what Subhuti said? Nothing. And the Buddha tapped him and said, good job. Right? As I'm speaking, you got all these people looking at me, listening to me. You know how dangerous that is? If I'm not careful with what I say. Right? And what do our words typically start with before we speak? Even though we don't always realize it. What does it start with? You all said that at the same time. Yes, ourselves, but what specifically? Body, speech, or mind? Mind. Our thoughts. So very often we think, then we speak, then we do. Or we think, then we do, then we speak, either way. But it starts with our thoughts. You ever done something really stupid and said, I wasn't even thinking? You were thinking, or you wouldn't have done it. You just wished you hadn't done it. Or you didn't think long enough. Or your thoughts were not things afterward that you really are okay with thinking. But those actions, those words came from thoughts. So dependent origination, the causal relationship of all phenomena, is understanding how do we impact everything in the world. Right? The environment, people, strangers. Well, those are people, but you know what I mean. How do we impact everything? And once we understand that every thought, word, and action is impacting the world around us, that can be pretty beautiful and pretty scary, depending upon the intention. And that's really what Buddhist practice comes down to: is what's your intention? We're going to spend our lives thinking, speaking, and doing, or communicating, I should say. And the question is, what's our intention behind those thoughts, words, and actions? Is it coming from the place of, as the Buddha called them, the three poisons: greed, anger, and ignorance, which is the cause of our suffering, why we struggle so much? Or is it coming from a place of generosity, compassion, and wisdom? So this practice is really about cultivating endless generosity, compassion, and wisdom. So every thought, word, and action that we bring into the world is coming from that place of generosity, compassion, and wisdom. That makes sense? Yeah. So simple, right?
Not easy.
Not easy. Yeah. What else? Thoughts, questions? Yes.
I'm very sick. I used to look at a card where she sat and she was surrounded by practitioners. And I want to find them, but I just want to lay there. I need help. I don't wanna be greedy or have that intention. I know I can do a lot better. I've learned I can do better.
Yeah.
Are the practitioners in here?
So, there's a great Japanese Zen priest, Shunryu Suzuki or Suzuki Roshi. He built the San Francisco Zen Center in the 50s. And one of my favorite quotes is he would say to all his students, "You're all perfect exactly how you are. And you all could use a little improvement." Now, I don't know your pain. I can't fully understand your pain, but I do know pain. I know emotional pain. I know mental pain, physical pain, tremendous depression, tremendous anger, tremendous sadness. That was a majority of my life. I know that feeling. And while that feeling might be different for everybody, those feelings are not fun, and they're not pleasant, and they're scary. But what I can tell you is, in my experience from this practice, I had to first begin to have, and I mentioned, compassion. I had to first begin to have compassion for myself. I had to begin to have love, kindness, and compassion for this guy. Because all I had towards this guy was greed, anger, and ignorance. And from that place, and this is not, I wish I could just tell you, read page 7 and everything's going to be fine. It takes time. Buddhist teachings talk a lot about patience. And so if you combine patience towards yourself and slowly, one day at a time, each day, begin to shift, because what I heard from you is that suffering has a lot to do, and I'm just assuming here, and I could be completely wrong, which I am a lot, but it sounds like there's a lot of internal suffering and pain, and some of that has to do with potentially how you see yourself. And so if we can begin to have kindness and compassion towards ourselves, it changes things a lot. But it requires patience, it requires time. I wish it was a quick fix. The first thing the Buddha taught is, he said, life is filled with suffering. Well, that sounds pretty miserable, doesn't it? Yeah. But it doesn't mean all of life sucks. It just means we're going to suffer a lot. And it can be extreme death, loss of loved ones, memories, people that are gone from our lives, very extreme trauma that we experience in our lives. And that stuff's real, it happened. And then there's little bits of suffering. We didn't like the way our coffee was made. We don't like the way our shirt looks with our shoes. We don't like the way the person looked at me when I cut them off on the freeway. There's little things. And so our entire day is filled with these moments of suffering, from simple little things to extreme trauma. And can we begin through all of them to have some kindness and love for ourselves, so we can then begin to open up and feel that from others? So, and again, I'm sorry for your pain. I really am. There's a lot of people in this room that feel your pain. So thank you. Other thoughts, questions? There's a question here. So the question is, back to kindness, always back to kindness, first of all. How do I get out of a place of anger and frustration during an argument and turn the situation around? See, it's never fun when I know the people who ask questions, because then I start trying to tailor it. That's why I try not to get to know any of you. Makes it easier. Don't take that the wrong way. I love y'all, but so Alina, how do I get out of a place of anger and frustration during an argument and turn the situation around? I don't love the way. Well, when we are angry and when we are frustrated, first off, which is the nature of your question, that leads to an argument. And when we're angry and when we're frustrated, let me use someone in here as an example. Anyone been in an argument recently? Who wants to play along? There you go. I can't see it. What's your name? Oh, it's Michael. Hey, what's up? Oh, if I'd known it was you, I'd have picked on you right away. I just saw like the beanie. I couldn't really see your face. So, Michael, you've been in an argument recently, yes? And when you were in that argument, did you think you were right?
Of course.
Of course. Not even yes, of course. And what do you think the other person thought?
But they were right.
That they were right. You ever been in an argument and you realize, oh, I'm wrong, and you're still arguing just to win the argument? Because then you want to feel better, right? So in that argument, you think you're right. The other person thinks they're right. We got a problem here. This is the nature of all conflict in the world. Every argument with a friend, a loved one, a stranger, every community, every war, every global situation, everything is about two sides, two views that think they're right. And when you're right, because I know you were, in that argument, how much of your time was spent trying to prove that you were right? And how much of it was spent trying to actually listen and understand what their argument was? On a scale of 1 to 10. And you can say 0 if you want.
I'd say, truthfully,
Yeah.
I've been trying to practice different things in my life.
Yes.
So I was trying to see from a different angle, a different viewpoint, and understand. So I'd say like half.
Yeah. Most people, if you'd said half, I would say I don't believe you, but I do know you've been working at this for a while, and so I actually do believe that you were trying to see from their side. You couldn't. You tried. You still felt you were right, but I give you props for at least trying to see the other side. And very often, for many of us in arguments, we don't want to see their side because we just think we're right. So we don't even open up, back to Alina's question, we don't even open up to the possibility that our anger and frustration is so much coming from a place because we think this is all about proving our view. And we're not listening. We're not understanding. We don't have to agree with their side. But can we open up to the possibility and understand? There's so much social injustice in this world, racial injustice in the world, so much oppression, so many disgusting things going on. We have to listen. We don't have to agree. We don't have to change our mind and take their side. We don't have to say we think they're right. We don't have to say we think we're wrong. We have to listen. We have to understand. I often say I want every racist in this room because I want to understand why they have the views they have. This is the practice to me. This is the Buddhist teachings on ultimate wisdom and ultimate compassion, is to go beyond judgment of anyone for anything. Doesn't mean what they're doing is right, doesn't mean we agree with them, doesn't mean we take their side, but can we understand them and their entire life's experiences and all of the generations that they've been taught what they've been taught, why they think that way. And in so many cases, and Alina, I'm definitely not trying to or wanting to minimize your situation at all. But in so many cases, for many of us, the arguments that we're in are relatively minor. Not all, but many of them. Throughout our day, a majority of our arguments, I find, are just stupid little things that we're triggered by. But those same little things have been triggering us for years. And so we get triggered again so quickly without giving any thought to why are they this way? How were they raised? What were they taught? What abuse did they experience? So really, to understand the nature of your question, Alina, it really begins with, if you want to turn the situation around, drop trying to win an argument. Once it's no longer about winning and it's about understanding, then that can very quickly change the anger and frustration into love and compassion. And we all have choices. We don't have to stay in situations that we don't want to be in. Not always the case, but very often we have choices. But stop trying to win the argument and just listen and understand. So I hope that's helpful. We'll do one more. Yeah, I see it. Just a hand with a glove on in the back.
Could you distinguish between meditation and prayer?
Yes, I can. Well, I can give you my thoughts on that. So the question was, can I distinguish between meditation and prayer? So about 20 years ago, I started doing prison work. And there was a guy in there who was also in recovery and working through the 12 steps. And the 11th step is prayer and meditation. And the one thing he said was, that stuck with me to this day, it was probably 17 years ago. He said, the way he uses prayer and meditation is that he uses meditation first to get quiet and to listen to himself, to his thoughts, and to become present with what's going on. And then from that place, he goes into prayer and prays to whatever or whoever he believes in. And we had a kind of discussion about this, and I remember us kind of all laughing that, if you are someone who goes into prayer, but your thoughts are filled with anger and rage and hatred, and you're not really paying attention to your prayer, if you believe in that, and whoever you're praying to, they're going to know. So if you go into prayer, allow yourself to, this is my suggestion, just settle and become present. Allow any sort of frustration or stress or anger, and at the same time, any sort of happiness or joy or excitement. Allow yourself to kind of settle into a place of equanimity. Buddhist teachings, we look at the 4 Brahma Viharas: loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And so this practice isn't about always being perfectly happy and getting everything you want. And it's also not about being completely miserable. It's finding a balance, finding a middle path. And so I think if we're able to do that prior to going into prayer, it's a beautiful place to come from. So, yeah. If you ask me that tomorrow, I'll give you a completely different answer, but that's what I got now. So I hope that's helpful. Does that, how does that resonate with you?
Thank you.
Yeah, good. So, anything else before we close? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Again.
Just curious. Are Buddhists, do they tend to get involved? I can't see how Buddhists can get involved with politics or causes. How does that work if you're trying to disassociate yourself from stress?
Such a great question as we're 6 minutes past time. So let me just sum up in about 30 seconds how Buddhists handle politics and religion and all of that kind of stuff. But most importantly, I want to clarify, which I'm really glad you said that, because hopefully this will send you off with a different view, or at least I should say understanding of Buddhism. Because the last thing you said, which was to me the most important thing you said, is how do Buddhists deal with politics and other things if they're trying to disassociate? Buddhists do not disassociate. And the late Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Vietnamese Zen master teacher who recently passed. He built Deer Park Monastery and all of that stuff. He coined the phrase, or most famous for the phrase, what's called engaged Buddhism. And I'll close with this thought. It's called engaged Buddhism. And it is, in fact, Martin Luther King nominated him for a Nobel Peace Prize for his work he did around racial injustice. And so engaged Buddhism is looking at social, political, economic, environmental injustice. And with a Buddhist lens of kindness and compassion, how do you engage in it? So very often around the term in Buddhism we call non-attachment, people often think like, oh, non-attachment. Somebody here once, about 3 months ago, they thought, it was a high school kid, and she said, well, if you're not attached, does that mean you can't love your mother? Right? I was like, please love your mother. Right? Non-attachment in Buddhist practice is not a cutting off of. It's actually opening up to everything and everyone. Endless love, endless compassion, without attaching to our views or ways of being, and not forcing what we think on others, but listening to them. And from a place of kindness and compassion and love, can we work to make change? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. And last thing I'll say, when you're in that moment and you recognize that you are, for lack of better words, fighting for equality, right? Can you fight for equality without being pissed off? Can you fight for equality without hating others? Can you fight for equality and still love the person who doesn't want it? Can we do that? So I hope that's helpful. And then we meditate to try to stay calm while we're doing that. So that takes hours. All right, so we'll join palms. We'll close on that. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained be transferred to those who need it most. May all be free from suffering. May we all be free from suffering. So before you all head to the door, our phenomenal Dharma Glum host, Eddie, has a few announcements for you.
My name's Eddie. I'm your Dharma Bum host tonight. We opened the Dharma Bum Temple 16 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They're simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice with others. Almost every night, we have different classes led by people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for anyone battling addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 5 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer is always free. The full schedule is on our website and posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We also have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and then bring it back whenever you are done with it. Please straighten up your seat or cushion before you head out. Thank you for being here. We wish you well and hope to see you all again.
And one last quick announcement, thanks Eddie, is this Sunday at 1 o'clock, we have a Tibetan Lama who will be coming to teach. It was originally scheduled for the 12th, but his travel plans changed, so he'll be here this Sunday, the 26th at 1 o'clock. So thanks all, wish you well. Please drive safe.
Yeah.